Hey guys, and we're back. Sorry about that. We had a little technical difficulty. Hopefully, fingers crossed, this one is good. But nice to everybody who's going to join us. Again, this is the great director Christopher Moonlight Cooksey. He actually just got an award for his independent horror film, The Quantum Terror, which is now streaming on Tubi. He's also in the process of production on an upcoming sci-fi action film that we're talking about later on in the show. But Chris, reintroduce yourself again.
Well, again, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So, yes, Christopher Moonlight Cooksey, Moonlight kind of being an old nickname. I'm, first of all, very good at screwing up live streams at the start. Uh, and anyway, yeah, so where to begin? I was a creature kid, loved sci fi and horror movies. And I was born in England, but moved to just outside of Los Angeles when I was 6 years old. So I was kind of exposed to a lot of,
LA guy.
yeah, a lot of stuff. A lot of Hollywood stuff was kind of out there already. So I kind of grew up just thinking that that was normal. Doesn't everyone grow up with a movie town just outside of their neighborhood? But of course, from uh, Star Wars, Star Trek to Alien, Terminator, Predator to things like Hellraiser, The Exorcist, The Shining, all those classics that, what a time to be alive when all that stuff's kind of coming at you at full speed. A lot of also lower budget stuff, the Roger Corman stuff or these like Full Moon Studios, all these like lower budget horror movies. And I just had to be a part of it. Of course, my parents were like, "Well, why don't you be an orthodontist or something?" Well, like whatever. I just overactive imagination. Cartoons, loved watching the Saturday morning or the after school cartoons from like He-Man, GI Joe, Transformers. Uh, you know, as typical a pop culture kid
Right.
as you could get. But we were kind of grow up what I would call like lower middle class. We didn't have a lot of money. Most of my toys would come from my grandparents when they come to visit and spoil us. But I kind of at an early age was going like, okay, I don't have the toys that I want, but maybe I can, find some stuff in the garage and build my own toys, or maybe I can put on a haunted house at Halloween time. And that just kept going until I think when I was a teenager, before fan films or YouTube was a thing.
Right.
Um, Alien 3 was coming out, and there was all this behind the scenes stuff that you could see. And I always loved those behind the
Oh
scenes.
yeah.
They'd be specials on TV, or, you know, um, when you would, when DVDs came along, you would get like the special features on the DVD, which was awesome. And that was kind of like my film school, the beginning of my film school, were those things. And I just saw them doing all these miniature effects and puppet effects for Alien 3. And before I even saw the movie, which I've been very open that I was disappointed in that movie, but
We
I
got to
was
talk
just
about that.
I was just eating up the behind the scenes features with these miniatures, and I knew the special effects artist by name.
hmm
That's how into it I was. I'd get the magazines, all that sort of thing. So the time came when I had like one of my friends in high school had a video camera and knew how to edit the footage on like two VCRs. It was like VHS tapes. And from there, I was like, oh, I can build some miniatures. Like, let's make an Alien fan film. Fan film wasn't a word in my lexicon. I
Right.
was like,
Right.
I just make, so I started building alien puppets, and that sort of tried to make my own sci-fi weapons out of like cardboard tubes and pieces of sprinkler pipe,
That's
like whatever,
cool. That's
whatever
what's
I could
up.
find.
Right.
The alien hives were all like thrown out pieces of drywall I'd find, and I would like melt hot glue on them because that
That's
kind of looked
cool,
like
man.
alien hive.
Right on.
Driftwood too. I was by the ocean, so driftwood, if you painted it black, it looked kind of like hive. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. But ultimately, when you're a kid who's got big ideas and your friends are at first, they're like, oh yeah, cool. But then they lose interest. There's like
Right.
something else going on that week. And then I could never pull it together. And then I kind of found that was like a reoccurring theme, uh, in, trying to make short films and stuff. I would try and pull together people, but like people would lose interest. I've literally
Yeah.
made, and you probably experienced this too. I've made short films where like halfway through shooting them, the person with the camera like decides to disappear and take all the footage with them.
Oh yeah.
So, um, but ultimately I was lucky enough to meet some of my role models in the special effects industry, which I can talk about more. And
Oh nice.
I got married and I got some opportunities, being close to Hollywood to do some work for people like Ray Bradbury, the sci-fi
Sweet.
author.
Heck yeah.
And I mean, I can talk about all this stuff, but that's the general gist of it. I just kept kind of like never relenting and started to snowball until I got to my wife and I decided to move to Texas, uh, where I one of my role models, Alec Gillis, who I met, and he was doing a movie called Harbinger Down, which was essentially he and his partner Tom Woodruff Jr. had done uh, the prequel to The Thing, the practical effects for that. And it all got painted over by CGI, which they were heartbroken by. And it wasn't like the CGI people had enough time. It's like one of those things. The studios had them rush it out. They didn't get to, the CGI didn't get to do the job they wanted to do. So their rushed out work looked like crap. ADI didn't get to showcase their work, but they did show it on their YouTube channel. And they got such a great response from there, they decided to launch a Kickstarter for Harbinger Down, but they didn't really know how to manage social media. And my wife and I had just spent all our money like moving to Texas, and we were broke and just barely scraping by. But I was like, there's an opportunity here. So I wrote to Alec and I said, look, I don't have any money to donate to your Kickstarter, but I can donate my time. Will you let me run your social media for you so we can really get out there
That was smart.
and and so he agreed to it because I was like, you've got this fantastic Kickstarter and there are all these fans that I know are going to love it, but none of them know it's there. I'm like, we got to get you out there. And at the time, the sci-fi makeup challenge show Face Off was popular. Comic Book Girl 19 was really popular on YouTube for doing her Prometheus breakdowns. So I got her and Alec together. They did an interview.
Nice.
And Lance Henriksen from Aliens was in their movie. So she interviewed Lance. And they did get some private investors, but we really got the fandom going. And Alec said that I could do some creature design as like a thank you, like me and a few other people that helped out. He said, I can't guarantee we'll use the designs, but like if you come up with something that hits, then yeah, we'll use it. But he was saying to me like, wow, you really kind of like picked up the saber and like charged the hill on behalf of me. And I said, look, it's like, this is something I've always wanted to do. If someone like you, who has an Oscar nomination and all these films like Alien franchise, Tremors, Starship Troopers, Spider-Man, like just a whole slew of these films under your belt. If you can't do this, then what right do I have believing that I can do this? Right. So it's like, you better go make this movie and make it good, which he did. I'm really proud to have been part of that movie. And it was like a little Roger Corman style movie. But as he was doing that, we moved out of Austin and into a neighborhood, a city, just a couple of towns down from Austin, into a house with a garage. And a garage for a filmmaker is like, that's a studio.
That's playground.
Yeah, exactly. So I started thinking like, okay, I want to make my creature feature. And I learned all these things during the process of Harbinger Down, that all these little low budget tricks that Alec knew and he was posting about on his studio ADI channel. And he was also generous enough to allow me to have access to him through email and ask him questions. So I was like, okay, what's the low budget stuff? Tentacles, you don't have to worry about getting anatomy right. Tentacles just they squirm around. There's all sorts
Right.
of tricks you can do to make them move. Like what are the building materials that like people are using on a low budget? Packing tape, trash bags, bubble wrap, latex,
Styrofoam.
styrofoam. Yeah,
That's a big
styrofoam's
one.
a great one.
I use it a
Uh,
lot.
and there should be. I joked with my wife. There's that show Hoarders. I was like, they should do Hoarders Filmmaker Edition. You know,
Oh, you
we've
should see my closet. Actually, I got an office that's a nightmare, but it's like I can't. I hate throwing stuff away. You know how much Michaels cost? Like the stuff.
right.
I work at a job. I'm thankful I work at a job that a lot of stuff gets like packed. A lot of packaging material gets thrown like huge pieces of cardboard styrofoam. And I try to take it because I told my fiance if I was to buy this online, this is hundreds of dollars.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, this is the great thing now about the technology that we have, and this is like the number one thing that I tell people, like, look, doesn't matter what it's made out of, how much you think it needs to be like these premium materials, like making molds and all this sort of thing. What matters is like what does it look like to the audience in the frame? Because if you can convince them, they don't know, they can't reach through the screen and touch it. They can't examine it. Like there's only so much resolution on the screen that they can see through what it's made out of. The like not to jump ahead, but the tunnel sets for the Quantum Terror, um I didn't have the money to create flats and build plywood sets, and I couldn't really do that in a garage anyway. And another fear was I'm having these unknown actors, these local actors who were very talented. I was very pleased with their performances, but they're coming into my house, into my garage. The last thing I need is some heavy piece of set to fall on one of
Right.
them.
That's it. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. It's like, so I built these tunnel walls out of 1-inch thick styrofoam sheets that I bought from Lowe's. And I just painted them with gray paint and sand and like did things to dirty them up.
There you go.
And the everyone was so convinced by them that they even the actors a couple of times like went to lean against them and they would start to bow in and they'd start to fall, and they're like, no, don't.
No, ain't that real?
So it's again, it's like right now for my new project I'm building well, again, we'll talk about that later, but I'm building a creature out of cardboard. And it's like you can do a lot with cardboard to shape it.
Absolutely.
To and then when you dress it up and light it, it's like, yeah, it might not be like Hollywood level production value, but it'll hold up to the quality of what I'm doing and the style of what I'm doing. Making and this is the other thing, making your budget into the style, that is a big part of it, because the audience, they once they kind of understand what they're watching, that falls back to the subconscious. As long as you keep the story engaging, they'll accept whatever it is. And I think these days a lot of aspiring filmmakers kind of forget that. I mean, even in the days I remember watching movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's like 1 minute they're in an outdoor scene and then there's the thunderstorm is coming, and then suddenly Harrison Ford is very definitely in front of a blue screen. But you're in the moment. You don't care. Like your brain goes, oh, that looks a little different than the last shot, but the story's so compelling that you're like, whatever. It's not like we don't know we're watching a movie. Right. So anyway, what was the question again?
We're just talking about your background and everything. Actually, what you just talked about kind of segued the next question. But before I get to that, I did want to address how you're 110% correct about effects. Because the one thing I take when I do it and what I've learned, always make the effect for the camera. Never make it for the naked eye. Because,
Hmm.
a lot of stuff, if you see all those things, it's a goofy little piece of plastic. But no, look at it behind the lens. Look at it when it's framed correctly. Look at it when it's lit. When we do color grades. All sound behind it. It becomes this totally different thing. And I think that's one of those things, like, certain directors, I'm specifically talking about directors, because, I think if you don't understand effects, you'll have a difficult time shooting effects, right? You got to have an understanding of it, and especially if you got a DP who understands as well. So you guys go in kind of knowing how to frame everything, and that's where that's why you can tell the difference between it could have been the same effect in two different movies. And why in this one movie this looks so convincing, but in this one looks like crap? Well, because they understood how to handle that thing. They knew how to do it. So yeah, so I totally agree with you on that.
That is, so important. And I think in this new era of independent filmmaking, a lot of aspiring directors are going to have to understand that again, because there was a period of time in Hollywood when CGI hit. And I'm not by any means an anti-CGI person. I love the technologies that we have at our disposal. I wouldn't be able to tell my stories without them. But it used to be that there was a direct connection between the director and the effects team. And then in the invention of, and this is Phil Tippett, who worked on, a lot of,
God and stuff.
yes, Mad God. He did Star Wars. He did uh, Starship Troopers, Jurassic Park. He was a practical effects stop motion guy. And then he went over to CGI because he wanted to keep creating creatures. But he said then entered the era of the visual effects supervisor. And this visual effects supervisor was like the guy between the director and the effects team. And suddenly the director was kind of out of the equation. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know how to shoot for an effect because he just thought, oh, we CGI, we can do anything. And then the director keeps changing his mind, and he tells the visual effects supervisor, who doesn't impress upon the director what it costs, what it takes to make those changes, and the time is running out. And so that's why when a lot of CGI hits the screen, people go like, oh, bad CGI. It's like, well, CGI inherently isn't bad. It's just like anything else. If you're running out of time and the director can't make a decision, it's gonna look bad.
Correct.
But a great example of a movie on a budget, I think the budget ended up being, there was some debate about it, but I think it ended up being about $9 million, but Godzilla Minus One. The director was the visual effects supervisor. Right. So he was literally like sitting down with the effects team after they shot it, and they had planned all the shots knowing what their limitations were. And so and so therefore they shot with those limitations in mind to get the best possible results. And and what happens? A Japanese language movie comes to an American audience who is starving for something of quality because Hollywood isn't providing it. And everyone, it just blows their mind. And Hollywood can't figure it out.
Right.
Like,
and you know what? Now that Minus One is the way I sum it up. It's District 9. Same thing District 9 did when that came out.
Yeah,
exact same.
Neil Blomkamp, exactly the same thing too. He was an effects guy. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the Quantum Terror, which I don't know if I should let you go into the next question or not, but I can speak to the effects of the Quantum Terror now, or I can wait until your question. How do you want to do it?
Well, you can get right into it with this question. So we pretty much talked about what got you in the film and everything, and what kind of set up doing Quantum Terror. It's good that you addressed the most important thing I think filmmakers should take out who are aspiring. You worked on stuff prior to your movie. You worked with, so you had an understanding going in. It wasn't like you just, I woke up one day and want to make a movie. This was a build up to things. You already set it up, so that helped out a lot. But with that, so your first one, Quantum Terror, just run us through the whole production from the pre-stage, which you kind of already did, production, and the release and what it did.
Yeah, well, okay. So starting from the beginning, again, it kind of harkened back to that Alien fan film that I wanted to make,
Mm-hmm.
where one of the things was we were teenage boys, and there were like, wash tunnels just, it's in California, well, pretty much everywhere, but there's a lot of mountains that if it rains heavily, it floods because all the water comes running off the mountains. So there's a lot of like wash tunnels going under roads to compensate for that. But during the summertime, they're just like a place that kids would, oh cool, let's go explore this tunnel. And I thought to myself, well, these look a lot like something that might be on the set of Alien. It's dark, you shine a flashlight down there, like we get some smoke bombs and set them off in there. Probably shouldn't have done that, but so when we moved to this house, one of the things I noticed was right across the street there was a wash tunnel. Now it just went out to the other side, but it's like everything came flooding back from there. And I thought, like, I've got a tunnel, I've got a garage, I want to do creatures, using these cheap materials. And I sort of decided, like, okay, well, then what's the story? Obviously I've got to have a motivation for these characters to get down into these tunnels, and then what are they going to find there? And what they're going to find there kind of became contingent on what I could create. Like, I can work with these materials, I can get sculpey, I can and I'm asking Alec about this, and Alec was like, hey, you helped us so much, we're gonna send you a couple of our cable controlled tentacles from Harbinger down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, just totally blown away and grateful. Alec actually came, he was in Texas while I was making the Quantum Terror. So he actually, as a thank you, he came with his daughter Camille, who was also in Harbinger Down. And they brought barbecue and we had dinner together, and I showed him around the sets. It's like to have someone of that caliber who I looked up to growing up, who isn't actually too much older than me. I think he's only about, 15 years older than me. He was really young when he was doing these movies too. But anyway, going back to the creation of the movie, I started writing the script, and what I decided was, okay, I had tried to do short films before, and for whatever reason, they always fell apart. Again, somebody took off with the camera and all the footage. Another time, I did an all green screen thing that I was going to do Grindhouse style, where I thought I had written up the contracts right. I couldn't afford an attorney. But they weren't written up correctly. And then one of the people wanted to back out after I'd shot their scenes, and it kind of fell apart there.
Oh, that sucks.
And I was just, there may be a way to revive that one with the latest technologies that are becoming available in another form. But anyway, it was, I just decided, like, okay, I put all this effort into these short films, like, why not just put the effort into a feature length? Like, I'll just, that's the goal anyway. And I thought to myself, what's going to happen with this? It's super low budget. I'm going to shoot it on a Canon 7D. Like, wow. I didn't even have the money for a 4K camera. Yeah, and I did a crowdfunder, and I got a private investor who ended up becoming a good friend and producing partner. His name's Doug Mayfield. And I sold a car, got some tax return money, like all these things to gather up enough money to get a budget going. And I thought, like, the best that could happen is, like, I screen it a couple of times and maybe get some DVDs made. Maybe get it on Amazon, because at the time Amazon had its, like, I didn't expect a distribution company to want to pick this one up.
That's fantastic.
So, but I thought to myself, like, this is an opportunity to try on the shoes of all the horror movie directors that I love so much. Elements of The Thing with John Carpenter, or Into the Mouth of Madness. And Sam Raimi with the original Evil Dead. Not that I don't love the later Evil Deads, but the original Evil Dead is just exemplary of resourceful in making a low budget movie.
Definitely.
What else was there? There was like I said, John Carpenter, Sam Raimi.
Well,
But
can I add one in there? I was gonna take. When I watched it, I heavily saw From Beyond in it, and I like that. It definitely, especially when they go to the that dimension. Like this is so, and I said that's brilliant. I haven't really seen nobody try that since From Beyond, but you did a good job.
oh, thank you. Yeah, From Beyond and Reanimator were both there in the influence as well. In fact, Matt Blackwell, who plays Jacob, when we were talking about his character, I said, go watch Reanimator. Go watch um not Stuart Gordon. Uh
Jeffrey Combs,
Jeffrey Combs, but his character's name is
Herbert West.
Herbert West. Thank
Yeah,
you. I couldn't think of it.
yeah.
Yeah, go watch Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West. I said, don't copy that character, but like see if you can give me something that's a little bit of that like creepy
Right, I see that. Yeah,
you know.
I see that.
And yeah, so there was that. There was also David Lynch was a big one. I love Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And but Ridley Scott and James Cameron too. In terms of structuring a story, like watching that, watching the beats that went on with those stories. I kind of heavily borrowed the beats from Alien, but also Stanley Kubrick, and in a way, I kind of feel like I made like my own version of a low budget Shining.
I can see that.
When you look at some of the scenes, I didn't mean to, but essentially what happened was, knowing I was going to take all these different influences, and I was, I was watching videos from like the Studio 80i channel and Stan Winston School of Character Arts, all of these different things, just like throwing them into the blender that is me, and then seeing what I could come up with. And then another thing, and this is kind of where the artistic process gets a bit weird. I wanted to come up with a kind of through line in terms of like a visual vocabulary. And I've always been a big fan of psychology. I've studied psychology because I felt psychology would help me write better characters. But it did a lot more for me. It helped me to kind of liberate myself a bit more from some people who were bad influences, controlling, manipulative. I'm sure you've got your own stories.
Oh yeah.
But I decided I was going to use Carl Jung, who is like one of the fathers of modern psychology, as a base for writing this story's kind of subliminal and symbolic stuff. And as I was doing that, I really started to kind of realize that in doing that, in writing that way, I was starting to deep dive into my own psyche. And it almost became like, I do not do drugs, but I will say it was like a psychedelic experience, where things were starting to come back to me. And even to this day, I will rewatch the movie and realize that I put something else in there that had to do with who I am as a person, but unintentionally, completely unintentionally. And so there's a lot to read into it. There are things I could tell you that are, very obvious to me, like surface level things, but it's amazing how all these different things come back to me. And I thoroughly believe that a piece of art is completed when the audience experiences it. I don't want to tell them what to think of it. I want them to be able to find something in their life that they can relate to. And I think that's important. Everybody, I think we all have things that are like core parts of ourselves that are relatable. We're putting too much credence these days on surface level things that are, kind of more collectivist, more just like us and them. It's like we all have universal things within us that, if I do my job right, somebody might watch one of my movies, and first thing I want is for them to be entertained. The second thing I want, if the first thing is achieved, is for them to find something in it that is useful to them. And just as a frame of reference, oh, I've experienced that. or I have feelings about that, and then they can take that and run with it in any way that they want. So but that was a real kind of trippy experience writing it. And then as I started to put together the sets and the miniatures, and get the cast together, it was like every step, there's the finished draft of the script, but shooting it, editing it, all that stuff, adding the visual effects, was a revision after a revision after a revision. And it was a real learning experience. But to kind of get back into like the process of making the film. So I had built these sets, like I said, out of styrofoam. I had
they're really impressive too, man, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hey.
I also have to give a shout out to two people, my friends Jenna Green, who she was on the show Face Off as a contestant in season 4, and also Heather Lowe, who is a longtime friend of mine who was living near us at the time with her 2 daughters. Our daughters would play together. Cool. And she liked to do like doll houses. Again, like not a lot of money, get stuff from thrift shops, repaint them, fix them up.
That's all it takes.
So she was doing doll houses and all these cool things. And I was like, hey, can you like build these miniatures for me? And I taught her a little bit about, just scale. I think we did a 1/4 scale miniature of the actual set. So I was giving her I was like doing measurements and then scaling them down and telling her how to do it. And she did it perfectly, to the point where people tell me they can't tell which is the set and which is the miniature. And that makes me so happy to hear. And the funny thing is bringing the actors in, like I said, they were all, like Paula had done some things and Kristen was kind of doing some things as well. Matt was taking a lot of acting classes, and Jordan was, they were all like local actors. And they would come in and I would have them do these things like, so again, speaking to what's in the frame rather than, that happened a lot where I was going, okay, we're shooting this, and they're looking around going, that doesn't look like this. This isn't going to look real. I'm like, trust me, when we do it, it'll look real. And they did. But one of the prime examples is there's a scene where they're trying to escape a creature that's coming after them. Yeah. And it's very much, again, kind of Jungian Into the Labyrinth, running from the Minotaur type of archetype. But they climbed down a vertical tunnel to get away. Well, I didn't want to have them climbing on anything because I didn't want them falling off of anything. And I couldn't build anything strong enough for them to climb anyway. So that tunnel is made out of styrofoam, and we just laid it on its side, which was a trick that I stole from Dan O'Bannon and John Carpenter in their first movie together. Dark Star?
The Dark Star, yes.
Dark Star. Where same thing, someone's like trying not to fall down an elevator shaft, and there's an elevator coming down the shaft at him, and he's hanging on for dear life. It was just 2 guys with handles hanging on to like a false bottom, like walking towards him as he's lying on the floor, and they just flip the camera around.
Yeah, that's great.
So I did that, but because it was a foam tunnel set, we could also stand it up. So if we wanted scenes of them kind of like, pretending to hang on, and but the scene where one of them falls down the tunnel, we literally, and by the way, I don't know if you saw this, and I'll tell this to anybody that's listening on my YouTube channel, I did release a 45-minute making of this movie. So if you want,
check that out.
if you want to see, so when one of the characters falls down the tunnel, we had these slats. It was 3 walls, and then the side open for the camera, and the slats just so we could do the illusion of like you're looking through the slats.
Right.
So what I did was I just had her. I was holding the camera, and she and I were literally doing jump squats, where I'd have her jump up into the air and then squat down, and I would follow her down with the camera. And we did it about 4 times. And she's like, what are we doing? And I was like, just trust me. So what I did is I just, I cut out the part of her jumping up, and I cut out the part of her, squatting down on the ground. And I cut those 4 takes together with the slats rushing past, and it just looks like she's falling.
That's brilliant,
Um,
actually. That's pretty smart.
Thank you. And again, it's just between what's in the frame and how you can edit it together, the audience will fill in the rest with their minds.
Exactly.
And they don't realize they're doing it. But I think we as directors, we get so into the minutia of like, oh, we've got to make sure that this all makes sense, that we kind of forget that we can leave those gaps for the audience and they will fill them in, and it makes the experience more personal for them. At least I hope it does.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Chris, hold on one sec. I gotta run. I got something alarm. I gotta set something real quick.
Oh, okay.
Give me one sec. You can continue talking to us to the audience.
All right. Well, yeah, since we're on a live stream, if anybody's watching, and I hope some people are. Some people were before. So, but anyway, yeah, again, it's just cutting things together. And when it comes to editing, you sit down with all of this footage and you start to see where things connect. And, there's general things that you have to pay attention to, like when you're editing. And I was just talking, Christopher, about editing all this stuff together. You're looking for general things like eye line. One of the things that really kind of became a visual vocabulary for the Quantum Terror was because I was working with so many miniatures, but I didn't want to do too much green screen. We did a little bit of green screen, but it's, it can become obvious if there's too much green screen and not feel authentic anymore. Is I really love Silence of the Lambs. And one of the things that they do in that movie is they're constantly cutting to the character's point of view. So you're in their face as they're walking, and then it cuts to their point of view. And there's like, they'll have the actors kind of like look into the camera, like they're looking at the character, which I thought was really very, very cool. It made things personal. So even before we got down into the tunnels, I started establishing that visually in the way I shot and the way I edited, so that when I had them in the tunnels and I wanted to cut to a creature in a tunnel, which was, about this big, in a tunnel about this big, the audience was already in tune with this kind of style of shooting and editing. So if a character was like looking and then I cut to a miniature, they don't notice that there's no actor in that scene. They just assume that what's going on in that miniature shot and what the actor is doing is all happening in the same space. And again, it's just that vocabulary that the audience gets on board with. And so editing it and doing the visual effects, that became like making the movie all over again. And I was doing that while I was shooting. We shot 14 days total, but we did it all on weekends. So it took a few months to get it shot. The cast was they were just absolutely fantastic. Kristen Koshel, who plays
That's impressive, dude.
the lead, she is great. I still talk to most of them, and proud of what they did to this day. The big challenge actually was, without getting into too many details, was the sound and music. I originally had a friend that was going to do the music and do the sound, but he got sick. Not his fault. He's a very close friend, so I'm not saying anything bad about him. He did do a couple of musical numbers like that I used in the movie, but he just didn't have the time or energy. He was dealing with being sick to do the mix, do all the music like he said he was going to do. So Doug and I actually went and got some sound mixing lessons after waiting a long time. We were waiting so long, and he kept going like, no, I'm going to do it. Like, I want to do it. And finally I said to him, like, look, like, I can't sit on this movie any longer. I've got actors who are wondering if they're ever going to see the movie they made. And, and he understood, and we'll work together in the future.
Right. And there's a momentum with this. That's something, that I keep mindful of. And it's, I tell other people, like, when you make these things, you got there's a window. Like a lot of people, no, I got time. No, certain things you kind of need to get it going,
Yeah.
because
And I mean, on the other hand, though, I also tell people like, look, I do have two short films at the moment that have like been sitting on a shelf for a while, and they need certain things, and those things are some time, which I have other obligations, so I don't get to spend it on. I am working on a new project, which is like got investor money in it. So of course that's going to take precedence over something that we just
right.
shot, on a weekend. But at the same time, I get asked a lot, what's the hardest part about doing all of this? I said, there's two hardest parts, starting and finishing.
Yeah.
Getting the motivation to start and, is the hard part. Once you get rolling, like you said, there's a momentum. Then you start to like things start to fall together. It takes some time, but it always feels like that finish line is getting moved back.
Yeah, I mean, shit happens, man. Especially on low budget. I mean, there's certain things out of our control. You got
Yeah.
to kind of learn to deal with and problem solve. A lot of problem solving on independent films.
So the Quantum Terror ended up, for that reason, taking about 6 years to complete.
Wow.
But there was like that moment where I sat and I was, like the credits rolled, the music was all there, the sound was all there, it was mixed. I've got like surround sound speakers and that sort of thing. And by that time, a new opportunity had come up, which is nothing like I ever predicted could happen, but it was the opportunity to get the Quantum Terror onto not live stream, but video on demand platforms.
Nice.
And that came in the form of a service that's a few years old now called Film Hub. Have you heard of Film Hub?
Yes, I have. Before you delve any further, that actually leads us perfectly to the next question: is distribution. And for everybody who's listening, who's either making a film right now or planning on making a film, I really feel distribution is just, if not even more important than making the film itself, because that's going to determine what's going to happen with this thing, And you've actually made it, so I definitely want to hear everything you got to talk about this process.
Well, yeah, and I want people to know about this because I do think that this is at least part of the future of independent film. And I will say this, I can't obviously predict the future of what entertainment is going to turn into the next few years, but I think Hollywood knows that the days of them being the only game in town are over. And a lot of the technology is going to allow independent filmmakers to be competitive on their level.
Absolutely.
So my predictions are there's going to be a lot more independent films. Part of that's kind of a bad thing because it also means there's going to be a lot more terrible movies. But there's also going to be a lot more niche movies that can exist where they couldn't before, because now we can make movies on a much lower budget and cater to a niche audience and be profitable. I won't say that the Quantum Terror has been profitable yet. Sometimes people ask me, I'm like, oh yeah, it's been profitable, but then I realize it's made money, but it hasn't made back its budget yet. So excuse me. I'm getting over a cold, and that's still hanging on. I don't actually usually sound this raspy either.
Oh, you sound great. Don't worry about it.
Oh, thank you very much. Got a face for radio. But anyway, sorry. Told you the bad jokes would happen. Okay. Anyway, Film Hub came along, and I can't remember. I think I discovered it through another filmmaker named Jay Horton, if I recall.
Yeah, he did he does a lot of videos on this subject matter.
He's got a YouTube channel that's really good, and he crowdfunds. Was it Craving was his last one, and the new one is called it'll come back to me.
I think he has Indiegogo right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very informed. I think he's somebody that a lot of us should listen to because he knows his stuff. I mean, it's been successful for him. He's done he's steadily been making movies like nonstop. It's crazy how
Well,
fast
he's very no nonsense. He's and he works with another producer. I forget what his name is, but they've both been interviewed on Film Courage, and I got to interview Jay Horton for my YouTube channel.
nice.
But they're very smart, and Jay also has the advantage of being unmarried and not having any kids, which has probably allowed him to dedicate more time and to being profitable. But on the same note, the trade-off is like, I love being a dad. Absolutely love being a dad, and I've been married for over 20 years, and I'm very happy with that situation. I wouldn't have it any other way.
I agree.
But but when you don't have those things, it's easier to find some success with that stuff. But anyway, Film Hub, going back to that, their service is very straightforward. It's almost like YouTube in the sense that you upload your movie, you have to meet certain criteria that you've got to have certain deliverables. The audio mix has to be a certain way. You have to give them like tags, few pitch sentences. Now, for me, I really lucked out with this because they've got access to my favorite video on demand platform, which is Tubi, which is just great for both finding old horror movies and also
great.
and also filmmakers like us. I think a lot of people who would just never get a chance to ever be seen because they're not in Hollywood or they don't have a lot of money, suddenly, like, I hate using this term because it's so overused, but it's been democratized. Now, if you can get enough traffic your way, you can get a following, and suddenly people are waiting for your next movie. I see people say, I'm a Tubi movie fan because they like watching all the original content that people are creating, and they're waiting for the next one. And like, it's like, oh, my favorite Tubi actor it's like, these actors that are in a small town, who have got fandom because they, happen to be in one of these low budget movies that people will make fun of. They'll go like, oh, it's so low budget. But the thing is, it's still entertaining people, which is what I'm talking about with that niche. It may not be worldwide fame, but you're servicing a niche audience who loves what you do and is waiting for you to do the next thing. So awesome.
I want to get on Tubi, not cutting you off, but the way I look at it, Tubi is like, it's the modern day Blockbuster. I think Tubi does for independent filmmakers now what the video store did for those guys back in the 80s and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like,
And that was kind of the thing back in the 80s. There were a lot of people who they weren't Hollywood filmmakers, but they had a connection to like the Blockbuster purchasing thing. Like Roger Corman, he would make a movie and he would just budget it low enough that because he knew the guaranteed minimum sale to Blockbuster that he would get for it.
Gotcha.
So as long as he could budget it beneath that, didn't matter how bad the movie was, and some of them were pretty bad. Some of them were awesome though. Like Galaxy of Terror, Battle Beyond the Stars, Piranha. Yeah, he did Piranha 2: The Spawning with James Cameron.
Hell yeah.
And and James Cameron got his start at Roger Corman, and that was again also, by the way, Alec Gillis, just quick aside, talking about him again, who you can tell I'm forever grateful for him, but he got his start with Roger Corman, and he got a friend of his hired at Roger Corman who was James Cameron. So James Cameron actually owes his career to Alec Gillis, as I do. So we're practically brothers, awesome, is what I'm saying. But he never calls. So anyway, but going back to like Tubi and Film Hub. So Film Hub has all these, I mean, they've got Amazon Prime, they've got Apple TV, they've got Tubi, and I'm on all of those, and a bunch of others that I've never heard of Like I'd never heard of Filmzy, but Filmzy's international. And they've gotten the Quantum Terror on all these different platforms. And so you can see it around the world depending on where you are. If you don't have access to Tubi, there are other ways of getting it. But I was really lucky because in that little pitch, they say, write 2-3 sentences. That's a pitch for your movie. Why a video on demand should pick up your movie. And you can also use some hashtags. So one of the things I was thinking, I was like, okay, well, I know what kind of fans I was trying to appeal to because I'm that fan base as well. I wanted to make a movie that I'd want to see. Right. So I said, okay, it's for people who are fans of movies like Alien, The Thing, David Lynch movies. I forget which ones I mentioned, but Stranger Things was really popular, and people kept seeing the monsters I was creating and going, oh, it looks like Stranger Things. And the funny thing is that Stranger Things came out originally when I started working on it. And one of the monsters I made for it, I kind of had to scale back its appearance because it looked just like the Demogorgon.
Right. Linear thinking, man.
So, but like The Void had been successful. Yeah. And so I put in there like fans of Stranger Things will like this. That I'll never forget because it just so happened that right when my movie became available on Film Hub for services to start picking up, Stranger Things season 4 hit huge.
Oh yeah, that was the biggest season.
So the algorithm picked up my movie, and all these streaming services, including Tubi, picked it up. And Tubi, so Stranger Things season 4 released like I think their first 6 episodes, and then they did like 2 more.
Like movie version. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Link ones, yeah.
So Tubi released my movie the same day as Stranger Things. So anyone who is searching that didn't have Netflix but might have tried searching something similar to Stranger Things on Tubi saw my movie first.
That's awesome. I hate to say luck. It was meant to be. Let's say that.
Either way, I'll take it. It was so in the first couple of months, I got huge amounts of views, and I made most of my money on like in the first 3 months. I won't say the amounts.
Of course. Never.
Like I said, I still can't consider it profitable. I think over time it will become profitable. I did do DVDs for my supporters. I will probably at some point do some like reissues, rebrands, and do another PR push, probably along with like as I do more movies, because the idea for me, I've got a full-time job, I've got responsibilities. The idea for me is, don't see the first movie as a success or a failure. It's just another step. I'm building a library of movies.
That's right. That's how I look at it too. Exactly.
And as I build the library of movies, as one becomes more successful, other people might go like, oh, well, I really like that. Oh, he's done other movies. I'll go back and, and I like things. I was always, as a kid, I was doing like, I didn't just want to like watch Alien. There were the Alien comic books. I wanted the poster. I wanted the T-shirt. I wanted the resin model kit. It's like, it's all part of the experience. So I also try and create things that I think, oh, this character or this creature, like I would love to own that.
That's smart.
That thing, because it's, and it's not just me being like cynically marketing things. It's
you
like,
got to.
yeah, but it's not like for the sake of just like going like, oh, I can slap this on a lunchbox. It's more of the experience of collecting. Like I really just dove headlong into Alien and Aliens as a fan, and got books and T-shirts and all that. Yeah, it was I could never get enough of it, but that was a magical experience in itself. So I'm hoping to create things that people would want to have that experience as well. They want to buy a book about the making of it or something like that, which I did do a book about the making of Harbinger Down for Alec, which is also available on Amazon, like their print on demand thing.
So a couple things. First of all, in the YouTube links, everybody in the description, there's a link to all his social medias, and there's a link to seeing Quantum Terror on Tubi. So I highly recommend you guys check it out. If you like horror and pretty much all the movies we named, if you like any of those, you'll definitely like this. Especially HP. I think HP Lovecraft is probably the best one to sum it up. If you're a fan of HP Lovecraft's psychological horror that manifests into physical horror, I think this would be right up your alley.
I have to say, by the way, about H.P. Lovecraft, just like I really tried to dive into like the true idea of the metaphysical and cosmic horror aspect of it. It's not just monsters. It's that weird, like what happens to a human's mind when they come into contact with something so alien and other dimensional that experiencing it is impossible.
Right, you can't process it, right?
Yeah, to process, exactly.
But another thing about the distribution I wanted to touch upon is, okay, so you did. It wasn't like, excuse me, you went to like Terror Films or Venture. What was it? Babatas Ventures. I think that's one of them. In like Magnet, you actually went. You went to that site. Was it Film Hub? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I went straight to Film Hub. Okay. I did go to a few distributors, but they all turned it down. Was it Indie Rights turned it down on the basis of just this. I shot it on a 7D instead of something that was a bit more high quality camera. They did say it was a good movie. They just said it was like they couldn't sell it. A couple of other Terror Films. I do think I submitted to them. I didn't hear anything back. I submitted to Dread Central. They said, well, it's a bit too weird for us, even
Dread
though they
Central
were.
Said?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but
weird.
I really see. So when you upload to Film Hub, they let you track the sales. Okay. They will show you how your movie is doing in terms of money numbers. And they will show you all the platforms it's on. And also they take 20%, which is far less than a distributor. And people might say like, oh, they take 20%. It's less than a distributor, but they're still taking some money and they don't do any promotion for you. I'm like, look, most distributors don't promote your movie anyway. No. They put it in a pile and shotgun blast it out with a bunch of stuff at the same time. And most of it's a write-off for them. But they're not promoting your movie either. And a lot of them won't let you see the books or they'll cook the books. I'm not saying they all do this. Indie Rights has a reputation of being very transparent and very good to work with, for example. But I didn't want to get in that scenario where I just lost the rights to my movie. I have 100% rights to my IP. Film Hub doesn't claim any of it. I can make DVDs. I can make merchandise.
That was my next. I mean to cut you off, but that was my next question because that was another important thing. Like far as how's the breakdown at? So they just stream it. You can do whatever you want with the actual IP. Correct?
Yep, and I could even if I found like distribution to, I don't know, like a television station or something like that. Film Hub's like, whatever. They don't care.
What if you wanted to show it at a theater? Let's say you bought out a theater for a night to show your film.
Yep, no problem at all. Okay. The only thing they don't want you doing is like stepping over them to one of the platforms that they have a relationship with.
Gotcha.
So if I'm distributing through Tubi to them, they don't want me contacting Tubi because that's like me overstepping their relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, that's like, first of all, Tubi's not going to talk to me anyway. No. And this is the thing, people who want to get their stuff on streaming services, like there's too heavy a barrier of entry to them. They just want to deal with a distributor or some representative who can like go and take the steps that they need for that, and Film Hub provides that. As far as I know, they're the only service of their kind right now. I'm sure more will pop up. But this kind of goes to, like, I know someone who just went to CinemaCon, which is really He's an independent filmmaker. He's got a movie. It's very good. Another horror movie. I won't say anything about it now because I don't know how much he wants to keep under wraps. But he went to CinemaCon because he says that theaters are desperate for content now too because of the diminishing content.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
He said so. He's actually went to CinemaCon to go and talk directly to the theaters and see how open they are to showing independent movies, because technically Godzilla -1 is an independent movie, and they did more because the theaters, they take a cut of the ticket sales, yeah, but they just want butts and seats because they make their money on concessions, the popcorn, the hot dogs, all the overpriced stuff, and the popcorn buckets, that's their way of selling to the customer. So, whatever they can do to keep people coming into the theaters, they'll show whatever they can within reason. So if it's an independent movie, and it's doing well, why not? So that's what he's going to investigate at the moment. And, we may see more of that. We may see them opening up the doors to relationships with indie filmmakers.
It's funny you say that. That was my approach because I was going to try to do half and half. I was wanting to get a stream and then still show that at a couple of theaters. I did some research on that. It's not that much. Like the ones I was looking at, like now it's per showing. It's not like for the whole day. Let's say you booked a show on for like whatever. It's like it's between $400 to $600. That's not bad. I mean, you spend that and submit to festivals, and you might not even get in. So it's like, why not do that? And like, they just take that. Whatever you make off ticket sales is yours. And now, obviously, concession shit, that's theirs. But once you're paying the $500, you put your theater in there. Let's say you charge people 20 a head. You sell out, and most theaters like 300 seats. You sell out. I mean, there you go.
And I've heard plenty of stories of that being successful. It's just a matter of building up the buzz around it. But a lot of people want to see local stuff. It's like if you can get some buzz surrounding it and maybe, like bring some merch along or, do something to make it feel special. And that's that's why we want to tell these stories. We feel we've got something special that we can communicate to an audience. So I don't think that that's beyond reason. But yeah, as long as you do, try and get the theater thing going first. I think I could be wrong, but I've talked to some filmmakers who feel that streaming is devaluing movies. I don't entirely agree with that.
I don't either.
I feel like there's a whole discussion to be had around that. But, honestly though, if you've got the time and the energy to do events like that, it's going to be something that people never forget. If they like your movie or if they just had a good time throwing around popcorn with their friends while they saw someone local and got to speak to the filmmaker, I definitely want to do more of that. I think that there's, and there is physical media, which is, a lot of that has gone away, but there are still people who want to collect it. There's kind of a resurgence of people who want to own.
For it.
Yeah, there is. And it's like, there are even VHS collectors. People are putting their movies on VHS.
Oh, I can tell you some stories about that. Like, I found out some interesting things about in certain DVDs. Like, there's a whole thing behind that, and that's something we should talk about too. That you can, like, for independent filmmakers, like, that's something that we can use to our advantage.
Yeah, I think, like I said, we're creating an experience because we don't have the means to get as much distribution, but I think. And as we talk a bit more about Escape from Planet Omega 12, because there's a lot behind that, but I think that we're going to enter an age where there are going to be celebrity indie filmmakers, like one-man band people, just like there are celebrity TikTokers or YouTubers. I think that because of the way that technology is making it that somebody can make movies from their home, which I've already done once. And, I like the fact that, again, that it grew into this in the time that I conceived of making this movie. It went from I'll make a few DVDs and maybe get it on Amazon for a month or something to it's on video on demand around the world, and I won best indie horror film from
Yeah.
Film Threat. That was just uh, what would you call that? That was growth that was outside of me, that I managed to kind of be in the right place at the right time just because I kept putting one foot in front of the other.
Well, can I ask you a question about that? Since that again, like what you just described, that's what most filmmakers dream of happening. Because it's a good stepping stone. But with that, has doors opened up for you? Have more people took an interest in your work, knowing that you've accomplished these things?
Um, yes, but I wouldn't say it's like there's nobody like sending me messages saying like, "Hey, we got some money," like
Right, right.
it's not so much that, but it is the next doors have opened up, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of a description of that. First of all, I've never been one to kind of like do the film. I didn't think I was going to do the film festivals or I was going to do anything where I wanted an award.
Right,
It was really about the audience. It was
right.
about, getting my story to the people who are fans of stuff like that and making that connection. That was the reward to me.
Mm-hmm.
But Film Threat, which is, they've been around since the 80s. Chris Gore founded it. For a while, it was owned by Larry Flint, of all people. And then Chris Gore bought it back, and he did Attack of the Show. And he did, he made a name for himself as like a critic and a personality. And I saw that he was doing stuff with Film Threat and that there was an opportunity to get the movie reviewed. And that was one of the things that, doing my own PR push, I wanted some reviews, and like hardly anybody would touch it. But Film Threat had a little thing that you submit your film
Mm-hmm.
and they'll review it. And they, and they do their live streams, and their website is really cool. And they've recently been doing their expose on Disney called the D Files, which I think is a great name.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But I was like, okay, Film Threat's gonna review it, and one of their things is if we review your film, you become eligible to be nominated for Award This, which I later found out Chris Gore originally conceived of that name as just like a skit he was going to do on Attack of the Show, but never did.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of these things where it's like, I have a lot of respect for Chris Gore. He's like one of the few people that really champions indie films and understands their value.
Right.
So I thought,
movies too, so.
yeah, and he really is. He's a hardcore movie fan. He's got one of those minds full of trivia. So I thought, okay, a Film Threat review, like that would be a cool review. And they say they'll review it, so why not? So suddenly, I think I accidentally came across it. Nobody told me that the review was out or that they were even going to review it. So I open up the review, like thinking, like it was in the morning, like I'm like opening it up, and like the coffee's still kicking in, and I'm like, oh God, I'm about to get roasted. Like, like this is like, just brace yourself, whatever they say, like just let it roll off you and then move on with your day. And I ended up reading this review that was like fantastic, 9 out of 10. The reviewer said he'd already watched it twice and he was going to watch it a third time. Compared me to what he said it has like the low budget veneer of Basket Case, and called me a dime store Ken Russell, which I just thought was like the best compliment that
I can see that
I could get. Another director that I loved, like Gothic and The Devils and
Altered States, right? He did that,
Altered States. Thank you. I was trying to think of the other ones. And
Lair the White Worm. He did that.
Lair of the White Worm. Yeah, that was another one, which is a lot of fun. That also plays on Tubi.
Yeah, that's a wild movie, by the way.
Yeah. And I tried reading that book. It was by Bram Stoker. It was kind of like Ken Russell took a lot of liberties with it, but it was fantastic. So anyway, then I was like, wow, if they liked it this much, and I asked, I was like, I think the 2022 award this was about to happen, and I asked about it, and they said, well, wait till next year. It's already closed for that. So I waited a full year, and when award this was starting to, like, they weren't even like talking about it. It's just like, this is around the time. I was like, well, people campaign, for Oscars for your consideration. And I remember David Lynch doing that thing. He couldn't afford to take out the ads, but he wanted to get Laura Dern nominated for an Oscar. So he just went outside of like the Academy with a cow and sat in a director's chair with this cow and smoked a cigarette with a sign that said, "For your consideration, Laura Dern." And so I jokingly changed that to the Quantum Terror, and I posted it and tagged Film Threat on it. And I don't know if they saw it or not, but the next thing I knew, I was nominated. And I think, like, again, I never asked if they saw that or if that had anything to do with it. But the moral of the story is, though, if you want something, like, go ask for it. Go campaign for it, whatever it is. If you feel like it's something that'll help you, don't wait for it to happen. Like, put yourself out there. Put yourself in front of the people. And anyway, so when I got nominated, I said to my wife, I'm like, all right, we don't have a lot of money for this, but I really feel like I need to be there. So I got a plane ticket and went out there. And it was really funny, too, because I flew out there on a really empty flight. So I was chatting with the stewardess about what I was doing and that sort of thing. And then when we land, the pilot comes on and like congratulates me on my nomination.
That's awesome. That's cool.
It was so much fun. So I went there. I visited some friends, and we drove out to where the awards was. I stayed with my dad. Not a lot of money. And my mom came out with her boyfriend, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh yeah, so that's the other thing. Terrifier 2 was nominated as well.
Really?
So I'm sitting there going like, Terrifier 2 is obviously gonna win. It's Terrifier 2, but it's just fun to be out here and meet Chris Gore and Alan Ng and be with my friends and my mom here and put on a suit. And me and Comic Book Girl 19 was there. So I met her in person and thanked her for, we talked about Harbinger Down, and it was kind of like a culmination of everything. Like, wow, it's on demand. I'm here at an award show. I'm meeting things like Polly from Latino Slant and guy from Verbal Riot. And like, they're just like all these people that I watch on the channels.
Right,
and
right.
like,
it's crazy. It's surreal, right?
Yeah. And the show was phenomenal, and it's also available on Film Threat's channel. You can watch the whole thing. And I'm sitting there, and it was actually a tie between me and another filmmaker. So they do that sometimes, like 2 people won. So they announced the first one, and then I was like, okay, next one's Terrifier 2, and then they just said like the Quantum Terror, and I was just like, I literally, like, I don't know if it's like somebody like took both hands and just shoved them into my chest and knocked the air out of me. I just remember going like, like making this ridiculous sound and going up there, and Chris and Alan are there. I shook their hands and I made a little speech, which I have no recollection of. And I forgot to thank a bunch of people, but it was like, I've got it on a shelf now. I want to get a case for it with LEDs and that sort of thing. I was like, this is an award that means something beyond just a status award. Like this, right. This means everything, that journey. And then from there, to answer your question, it didn't open doors in terms of, like I said, no one's saying like, oh, your next movie is going to be with our studio or something like that. I don't know. But suddenly it was like everybody, I guess my status went up a few notches. I wasn't just and my friend Clint Carney, who is also a filmmaker, he made a movie that was released through Dread Central called Dry Blood. He kind of said to me as I was making the Quantum Terror, he's like, once you make the movie, you're going to be in this new unspoken club called the You Made a Movie Club. And he said that you're going to get more, like, it's not respect, but credibility.
Right.
And that's what it's done. From the award has given me more credibility. I do know more people in the industry now who are like, I know people who have like worked for Spielberg and Cameron and Guillermo del Toro and that sort of thing, going like, I really liked your movie. I want to do one of my own. You know,
Cool.
It's like, but you're working for these guys. It's like, yeah, but like that's their movie. Like you inspired me to do this, and they'll send me stuff that they're doing like on volumes or sets they built in their backyard or that sort of thing. It's like, so, when I say I'm going to make the next movie, everyone's like, can't wait. Not like they know I'm going to do it. It's not like someone talking going like, oh yeah, because they hear that all the time. Oh yeah, when I get some money or when I get the, blah, blah, blah.
No,
it's like,
I mean, you're absolutely right, dude. Like when you actually make something, filmmakers, it's like this bond. It's like, okay, they're legit. Like, they're serious about their craft. They know what they're doing. Because anybody can say they're making anything, right? But yeah, when you actually make something, especially when it's something people like, yeah, that does. You're in this club now. You're in this secret little club. You know what I'm saying? It's cool. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a respect thing, right? It's like, all right, this he's one of us.
It is really nice that people like it too. Like they don't see it as just like the worst reviews I got were kind of like, well, it wasn't too bad. It's just low budget. I'm like, okay, well, that's
you can't critique that though. I mean,
that's if that's the worst you have to say about it is it's kind of low budget. There's some things I think people kind of like, they're like, oh, it's some bad acting. I've watched, I'm like, there's no bad acting in it. I think they're just not used to unknown actors when they see the low quality of the camera, which I don't think is actually that bad, or the sound mix isn't like cinema level. Right. Sometimes the actors suffer for that, which is, but I think they all did a great job. Could they have done a better job? They're newer actors. So I wouldn't say that they did a bad job. They're just, a little bit of inexperience is still there, but I'm really proud of what they did.
Oh man, it was good. They did a good job, man.
I think they really they gave it their all, and that shows. And like I said, all these like little reviews that came from like nothing sites, they in the Film Threat, like Film Threat loved it. Like they know movies, so I'm good with that.
That's what you know. What there's a difference. What I really and what I think about time is there's a difference between a criticism from a moviegoer and a filmmaker. It's two different things. When a filmmaker says acting wasn't that great, that's totally different than when just a person who watches a movie who knows nothing about anything just says, "Oh, the acting wasn't that good." You're going to get two very different answers.
And the thing is, weight. Yeah, and the people who I've gotten so many messages from people who have nothing to do with the film industry that said that they really enjoyed it, which is like, and I mean, it's got fans. The movie's got fans. That's the hardest thing for me to accept.
That's what you want.
Yeah, like fans, like people like, I love this movie, and it's like, when can I get a DVD? I'm like, the DVD thing's kind of like, I got to figure that out still. Setting up a shop or something like that. But
they're expensive. The ones I've looked at, there are a couple of guys who've made stuff and they've done the DVD right. I've asked them, they sent me links to like their store. It's not that bad.
Yeah, it's getting the store set up and all that. That's stuff I have to investigate and learn and that sort of thing. But I do want to get it out there. But and now I'm still like, the Quantum Terror is always going to be part of my life, even though I'm on to the next one. And that's what I said about building a library. Like each one of these movies will remain special to me, and I will continue to like push them out there. It's not going to be make one, forget about it, make the next one. I want to build on them. I'd love to do Quantum Terror comic books someday, like
that'd be cool.
Other stories, or maybe not a sequel, but something in the same universe, something like that.
You ever thought about maybe if you shot like enough you could break? Let's say you shot like an hour's worth of footage, right? You had an hour's worth of story to tell, and breaking up like little mini things and spreading out over like time, like maybe like shorts to kind of keep it going?
You know, I don't, in the sense, yes, but more of like if I did it as a series where, some episodes, because video on demand doesn't need time slots. So not every story has to be a set amount of time.
Correct.
One episode could be 15 minutes, another could be an hour.
Right.
So I do actually think that would be in the future something with video on demand that changes the medium in some fundamental way where people look at stories differently in that sense. Yeah, I would love to continue to do stuff like that. It really comes down to bandwidth. And again, when we move on to talking about Escape from Planet Omega 12, I have some thoughts about that in terms of, telling stories because Escape from Planet Omega 12 is a series. It's not a movie.
Okay.
So
all right.
yeah, it's essentially, I'm doing 4 episodes, and those 4 episodes could be combined into a 88-minute film, but they're actually like, it's animation. So animation's been typically 22-minute episodes. So it's 22-minute episodes for the first season. And what I would like to do with that is, if it's successful, do comic books as well, which is kind of funny. Most people want to I used to be in the comic book industry a long time ago, and people would always want to make their movie script into a comic book so they could sell it to Hollywood.
Like a pitch. They want to make like a pitch packet or something.
Exactly. And I always thought it was cool that it was like, no. Like the first comic books that I really got into was, riding my bike to Thrifty's, to the spinner rack, and there was an ice cream counter, 27-cent ice creams. I remember that price. I get a strawberry ice cream, and I would buy a couple of comic books, and that was about what my allowance would cover. And the comic books on the rack, Now Comics did Terminator comics, which were about the war after the movie.
Yeah, I had a couple of those.
Yeah, and because my mom wasn't going to let me see Terminator. It was rated R. But this was my little sneak, was that I could buy either a comic book or the movie novelization. Like I found the movie novelization for RoboCop. It was like, wow,
Sweet.
And so I'd get around my mom that way. It was like, okay, I can't see the movie, but I got the book. I can find out what happened. But again, that experience, and I would love to be able to work with other artists and writers, because Omega 12 is kind of set up in a way like a serialized cartoon where it kind of resets after every episode. Each episode is a different kind of adventure. So you could do spin-off comics that wouldn't affect the canon or continuity. And you could, my friend Val, I'd love to get him to draw one. I know different writers like Chuck Dixon and Mike Barron, who I'd love to be able to ask to, hey, you want to write an issue, and we'll get such and such artists to draw it, and each artist can kind of bring their own style to it.
No, that'd be great.
So, this like building these, and this is very ambitious still, but again, you can do this and kind of cater to a niche audience. Right. You've done comics yourself, so, you understand, but you got to keep it going. And it's bandwidth again. It's like, if I were to always be doing this stuff on my own, I would eventually just burn out and die. So the idea is to grow it into something that's bigger than myself.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yes, since we talked about Escape from Planet Omega 12, I don't want to. I know you're still in the early stage of putting it all together, but you've done a lot of behind the scenes already, which is wild. I know you could, if you want to talk to people a little bit about what the story is, we can do that. But
yeah. Well, I've made no secret about it, because I think in this day and age, like as independent filmmakers, we're not a Hollywood studio that's sitting on a bunch of NDAs, right, that we can then announce our film get it, write-ups published in all the trades and have the movie theater stock it. And, like, we can't do that. So we got to let people know what we're doing to
Right,
some
right.
degree. I mean, I can
Yeah.
talk about it without really spoiling much. I can give the gist of it, but it kind of was born out of my disappointment in Ridley Scott's Prometheus and Alien Covenant, where I thought to myself, and I could kind of see what he was trying to do, like with Prometheus. It was kind of like Chariots of the Gods, and with Alien Covenant, it was almost like uh, a movie like The Black Cat with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff.
That's
People
good
come across.
comparisons.
Was that?
That's very good comparisons
Oh,
by
thank you.
you.
Yeah. It's like these people are just they're travelers, their spaceship is broken down, and they come across the mad scientist in his castle, and can we stay here for the night? And then all hell breaks loose.
Damn,
It's like
that's what it was.
so yeah, same thing was like our car broke down and it's raining, and the mad scientist is like, come in. It's like, okay. And so I thought, all right, I can appreciate that, but he's really like, I don't know what's beyond that. I don't know what he was trying to do, but I love stuff like I said, I like sci-fi horror,
Mhm.
but I also love animation, like and movies like Forbidden Planet, like the old school sci-fi, the old school horror movies like Black Cat or Frankenstein. There's kind of a little bit of I don't know what to call it. Like they're from a different time, and they feel that way, but they're still fantastic. They're still really entertaining to watch, and it's kind of like looking back in to a different world, seeing what these movies did. And so I thought, like, well, what if Prometheus and Alien Covenant were more colorful, more like Forbidden Planet, the original Star Trek, Robinson Crusoe on Mars, like these Planet of the Vampires, which Alien
Right.
is kind of based around, that sort of thing. And I thought, well, what's the scenario? Like, what can I do that's, blends these together along with 80s stuff that I love. Like I love the 80s, like I said, Roger Corman movies.
Right.
Frank Frazetta and Ralph Bakshi did Fire and Ice.
That's
This
what I
like,
was saying. I mean,
yeah,
not cutting up. That's when I first saw it. Okay, this is like Fire and Ice, especially how you pretty much did like a modern take on rotoscoping with the actress in that.
yeah. So what I did there, and I'll kind of get around to that because I do have a love of practical effects and
Mm-hmm.
old school stuff. But I also like that we have all of these technologies at our disposal that I feel like we've been handed these tools that nobody in any lifetime ever has been handed
Oh
to
yeah.
create things. And there's a resistance to them by some people. And I'll speak a little bit about that. But just going back to Escape from Planet Omega 12 in terms of what the plot is. So I thought, like, well, it's like I want something to be a bit sexy. Like I'd love to see, like something that's like scantily clad women
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
not anything like obscene, but that was what Fire and Ice was like. It's like my mom took me to see that thinking it was probably going to be like a Disney movie.
Oh boy, she wrong.
Yeah, and and here's like, these people like violence and Tigra's wearing like next to nothing in the thong,
Right.
and she's like deliberately sexy scenes of her like bathing and all
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
and I'm like sitting there in the theater, I think like 10 years old, something like that, maybe younger. Um, and it was, but anyway, I wanted to do something like that. So I thought, but I wanted to do a story that was more like centered around things in my life that are important to me now. My family is very important to me. My wife is very important to me. So I thought I'll base the character around my wife, and I'll base the character that is kind of her protector around me. So the idea is that she is the wife of a captain of this expedition that finds this planet. And it's teeming with life, but nothing's civilized. It's like a wilderness, an alien wilderness. And something happens where the entire crew, including her husband, is murdered. And she has to escape down in an escape pod. I actually have a mock-up miniature of the escape pod here.
Nice.
And but she's like in a state of undress. She's just in her underwear when this incident happens, because her and her husband had been trying to conceive a child, but they hadn't been successful yet. And so when the crew is murdered, she escapes. She takes the body of her husband down with her, and a little floating robot assistant that is just like kind of a combination of R2D2 and C3PO. And also kind of out of the black hole with those floating robots and that sort of thing. And they get down there, and she is like, she doesn't have training. She's not like a girl boss. She's not like kicking ass everywhere she goes. She's like devastated. She's scared. And this gelatinous creature absorbs her husband and becomes this kind of humanoid mass with this skeleton floating inside of it. And it takes on the personality of her husband. So it wants to protect her and fight for her and look out for her, keep her safe. And so it's her and this little floating robot, and there's a little animal creature that they're going to befriend as well. And they kind of represent the family unit. There's, you know, she represents my wife. The blob represents me, where I feel like this misfit creature that, you know, and the robot and the little creature represent our children. So it's like a family unit surviving on this planet, but there's still the threat that's hunting for her. So that's where I won't get into spoilers, but you know, it's going to be lots of action, monsters fighting, robots, bounty hunters, surreal stuff going on. This is an alien planet. You know, there's different, like, you know, I won't even tell you what happens when she has to figure out what she can eat on this planet. You know, it's just like, we're going to make it. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to do practical miniature sets and have the animated characters populate those. So I started building like things like rocks out of styrofoam, giant mushrooms or miniature mushrooms, but like, you know, it's an alien world. You can have giant mushrooms growing, this sort of thing. Shooting it against green screen. And like I said, like ships will be miniatures. I also have, here's a creature. Here's an alien worm. So it's practical, but the more controversial element is I'm also doing the main character as an animated AI character. So I've been learning AI. I've been learning Stable Diffusion and Vigil and Midjourney and a bunch of other stuff. And I decided I hired an actress named Isla Sir. I don't want to say her last name wrong, but excuse the coughing. Anyway, I had her come and like act out the character in front of a green screen. I gave her like ray guns and swords and spears because all that's in there as well. And then I used that as a reference with a 3D motion capture program called Wonder Dynamics that will replace your actor with a 3D character, a 3D model. And then I took the 3D model and imported it in through and created the AI character. So it looks more like a painted character than a 3D character. And I think it's wonderful. A lot of people are I understand the reactions to AI, but there's a lot of hyperbole around it. People say it's stealing other people's work. It's not. That's not how it works. It learns to identify objects the same way that people do. It's based around how people learn to identify stuff. And if you can identify objects, you can learn to recreate them. I've trained my own models based on my artwork and photos I've taken and that sort of thing. And I just really feel like I've always wanted to do something with animation and practical effects, but AI is allowing me to do things that I could never do because it fills in the gaps where it would have taken money before.
Right.
I'm not taking money away from other artists because I wouldn't have been able to hire those artists anyway. In fact, it's the opposite. Because I'm able to do this what little money I have raised to do it, I can actually spend on artists to help me get the rest of the way.
Right.
I'm hiring voice actors, I'm hiring sound mixers and musicians, so we will have an original score. And I've hired artists to, help me with the 3D models and illustrations that we train the stuff on, and
Right.
so it's a lot of this stuff that like I wanted to do, I can do, and what I couldn't do, AI took me the rest of the way there so I could tell this story. Um, and again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where I think there's going to be like celebrity TikTokers, there's going to be celebrity filmmakers, because AI is going to open those doors. And I actually know from researching the subject that a lot of the people behind the anti-AI movement are the big companies who are using AI, because if they can lobby the government to restrict it, they can take it out of the hands of the
Gotcha. Yeah.
independents, and they can afford to pay the fines or get
Well,
around the
Disney
stuff.
used it on the Secret Wars opening, and Matthew McConaughey, he's doing AI commercials all the time.
Oh
So
yeah. And
I'm like,
it's it's getting better all the time. And here's the thing. People worry that everything's going to be AI, and they're like, I don't want to watch everything that's AI. It's like, you're not going to. It's, first of all, it doesn't work as well or in the way that people think.
mhm.
If you learn how to use it, you still need to take a hands-on approach. It's not going to do everything for you. Maybe one day it will, but even then, what I'm excited about, because I love, again, practical effects, I love original art. I'm an original art collector. I'm a painter.
Yeah, I see your good work. I seen some of your stuff.
Oh, thank you very much. I see this as the same thing that happened when photography was invented. Yes, it knocked the wind out of the portrait painting market, where getting a portrait painted of your family or you was like a big deal. It costs a lot of money, but it forced painters to go in directions that would have never happened otherwise, like the Impressionist movement or the Surrealist movement.
Mhm.
They started going, okay, well, they don't need me to paint portraits anymore, but what can I do with this talent that I have, that photos can't? And that's what I think is we're going to see, a lot of filmmakers embracing it and using it in ways that aren't actually advertised. Like, they maybe, the people making the AI didn't think of themselves, which I hope is something I'm doing. But it'll also force musicians and artists and filmmakers to think, okay, well, what can I do to compete? What can I do as a reaction?
Mhm.
It's like, I love punk music. Punk was a reaction to like disco and all this like happy-go-lucky, feel-good dancing in the moonlight,
Right.
which I like as well. But it was like, these people are sitting there going like, I don't feel like boogieing. Like, I feel angry, and then they like made this really raw music where they cussed and criticized everything. And and then from there was a reaction to that, and we got like synth pop, post punk. We got bands
Oh
like,
yeah.
Huey Lewis and the News, and like, then we got like all this, like we got the 80s, and it's
Right.
like everything is a reaction. And if you want everything to stay the same, the only way that's going to happen is if you, like, everybody agrees to just not change anything, which isn't going to happen, or you become authoritarian, where and that's what we're seeing. A lot of people going like, boycott AI. We hate AI. If you use AI, I don't want anything to do with you, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're being authoritarian because you're telling people that they they've been handed this tool that allows them to tell the stories that are in their heart and their mind, and because you don't approve of it, they can't use it. And I just think to myself, like, wow, you know okay, you might feel comfortable saying that to me, But what about the person who's like a quadriplegic, like, Stephen Hawking's, who can't move, but maybe has a story to tell and now they can? Or somebody who is, in a third world country where, and I'm not saying someone in a third world country can't, because I've actually been contacted by people making films in third world countries, and they've like, I've encouraged them as well, and they've gone on to do amazing things. But these are resources for people, like the person who became a lawyer because that's the direction life took them, but now they're 50 something years old and they've been a lawyer and they still want to tell their story, but they felt like they can't. Like, there's so many people, so many ways that this can benefit people, but because everyone's kind of been ironically conditioned by the movies that we love, like Terminator, they think it's just going to take over and blow up the world.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned about, it's very new, and it's just one. I've told people, like, whether you like it or not, it's gonna be like Photoshop.
Yeah.
20 years from now, it's gonna be industry standard. Like the AI 20 years from now is not gonna be the AI we have now. It's just gonna change, And
I picked up Photoshop at Photoshop 4. So and I'm still using it today.
Artists. I remember when I first came out, artists, and artwork is done. Like, no, it's not. I mean, you still got to have a traditional artist. But with you, like, I've been following your stuff online, how you've been doing it, and the process you just explained to us, it's different, because it's not like you're just punching in commands on a computer, generating an image. You're actually getting an actress. You're still doing a lot of technical stuff. And like the AI, just pretty much, that's just the final to get that animation look you want. But as far as the actual movements and the block, like creating the scene, you're still doing all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I got into this because I love building miniatures. I'm building an automaton puppet of one of the creatures out of cardboard, and I'm going to put the like foam on it and kind of sand it, and then put fur on it and shoot it in front of the green screen.
It's gonna look awesome. I've seen your work. From what I've seen in Quantum Terror and the stuff I've seen on your page. Now, I already know it's gonna look money.
Thank you so much. And I'm hoping, my kind of hope at this point is, like, I feel like I'm a good writer. I'm not a great writer, but I have stories I want to tell. Mm-hmm. And there may be people that can write better scripts, but I want to tell them because they're my stories. I want to advocate for what's in my mind, not what somebody else is doing. But at the same time, it's like, there's only so much time. There's only so much I can do, I can afford. And again, I keep using this term. It's like, I want to make the miniatures. I want to make the puppets. I want to, I want to do all of that. And this can help me fill in the rest in a way that feels complete, that isn't going to feel cheap to the audience. And it really is my hope that, kind of like some of the people I admire, like, say what you will about him as a person, because everyone I've ever encountered that has met him or worked with him says he's a complete bastard. But James Cameron did push the technology in ways, and I'm not talking about like Avatar. I'm talking about Aliens, where, I learned a lot about editing and what's in front of the camera from that, because if you see how Aliens was made, and there's a lot of behind the scenes on that, he was really like just stitching together every technique humanly possible to tell this story that nobody had ever seen anything like before.
He's a filmmaker. I mean, like at the end of the day, he's a filmmaker,
Yeah.
So.
And again, that goes back to what I said before. He's a director that knew special effects, and he was pushing everybody beyond the limit of what they thought was possible. And that's what made that movie great. I'd actually argue once he got into Avatar, where they could just dial in any CGI creature that they wanted for him and he could approve it, he got less creative. So,
I agree.
When it comes to AI, it's like, I want to push this and see I don't want to make an AI movie. I want to make a Christopher movie that see how AI can deliver on that for me and for the audience. And that's part of that's like Discovery. I don't know what it's going to be like in the end. I don't know what the final version is going to be like, but whatever it is, I do hope to put it in theaters. Like I said, maybe I'll put it in as like a movie, but then I'll break it up like a pilot movie, but I'll break it up into 4 episodes for video on demand because sorry about the cough. This is the other thing to think about when it comes to distribution and making money on your movies, which I should have mentioned before. What I'm finding out now from Tubi is that they like the series format because what pays for all this stuff is still advertisement. So you can watch it on Amazon and pay for it and not get the commercials, or you can watch it on Tubi, and Tubi is actually what makes the most money out of most of these video on demand companies. But if you can give them something like a series rather than a movie that they can put more ads in, even though people don't like ads, that's going to equal more money. So a series is just going to be more profitable to me. So I formatted it like that. And one of the big things that really influences Escape from Planet Omega 12 is cartoons like Samurai Jack, where there's a lot of action and excuse me.
Are you good?
Excuse me.
I get allergies, so I get the sniffles and stuff. So I know how that is.
I'm getting over a cold, so I think talking this long is starting to kind of bring up
so good.
some stuff. But anyway, so yeah, you can tell I'm excited about this, and I can talk endlessly about it. But we should probably move it along for the sake of.
Yeah, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. We pretty much talked about everything. The last thing, because after we wrap on this, there's a couple things I just want to talk to you about.
Sure.
But the last thing, because you pretty much, we know this is your next thing is Escape from Omega 12. You pretty much the whole plan. I'm excited about it. You know what I'm saying? What I've seen looks really cool. And again, I believe in your LinkedIn, not your LinkedIn, your Linktree account, you have links to get to all that stuff as well, right?
Yeah, I am doing a Subscribe Star that has some exclusive behind the scenes stuff, uncensored. So it's like, all the good stuff that I can't put on social media. Right. It's, that's behind like a subscribe for people who want to support the project. I'm also hoping to announce some really cool voice talent soon. Nice. I won't get into that yet. There is one person I can say, which is Emmy winner Bill Oberst Jr., who, if you're a horror fan, he is an amazing actor, and he's done a lot of horror movies, and he's a good friend, and he turned in a great performance. But it's all there, and I'm very amenable to being, questions asked and stuff on social media. I like supporting other filmmakers. I feel like we can all do this. I want to see people be successful.
Awesome, man. Well, the last thing, and this is a quick fun one, is favorite creature, favorite special effect.
Whew. Okay. There's so many good ones. I'm going to go with like the typical ones. I would say my favorite creature is the original xenomorph from Alien, the big chap. Yeah. H.R. Giger, the artist, I'm a huge fan of his painted work. I have almost all of his books. Weird guy, kind of a nutcase, but he just delivered a vision that no one has been able to come close to yet. A lot of people try. He's influenced a lot of stuff. But, before him, it was either like hairy monsters or scaly monsters. There was no, or, like a zombie or a vampire or something like that. But it wasn't, nobody had ever seen that like biomechanical
Did he
look.
start that? Was he the one that created that whole?
That was genre,
him. But that style,
yeah. I mean, people had done like giant insects. There was like they with the giant ants. Mm-hmm. But, nobody had done, creating this kind of like essentially this nightmare vision of a world of just like reproductive systems mashed with, industrial machinery.
Yeah, 'cause it's almost got a realism to it, doesn't it? In a weird way. Like, you look at it and say, I could see something like that existing in a weird.
Yeah,
That
yeah. I
makes
think
sense.
he actually got shipping some of his paintings. He got stopped by customs who thought they were photographs. And he's like, where would I photograph this?
What dimension did I go to get this?
Yeah, exactly. There is a realism to it that I think is unmatched as well. There's just like the style, the technique, and so when we saw the space jockey and the alien in that world, it was just you before Prometheus or Alien Covenant, you kind of leaned in. You're like, what is this? That's what made Alien so great. It's essentially a slasher movie in a haunted house in space.
Right.
But it was the whole like how they found it, and it harkens back to Dracula's castle again. It's like you're a traveler, you come across this ancient castle, which it was the spaceship, and this ancient evil that you don't understand, and you take it back with you, and then you have to deal with it.
And that was the mistake I had. That's the issue I had with Ridley Scott with the Covenant and the other one is Prometheus. They never should have explained it. They never should have explained anything.
And his hippy dippy like pseudo intellectualizing, like it was. I hate to use this phrase, but it's like someone who's not that smart trying to act like they're really smart.
Right. Like the space jockey. Oh, that's it. It's just a big albino tall guy, and like that's it. Like, oh man. They never should have done.
But I believe too, it's like Alien and Aliens to me are the only two movies. As an audience of one, I get to decide what's canon from there.
No, I'm the same way.
So
I do like 3 though. I like 3 for different. I mean, I can get that later, but I appreciate 3 for.
You do know I've got like 9 videos on why I hate Alien 3 on my YouTube.
Yeah, like I said, I'll say I don't want this to be a whole nother topic, but I'll say the Alien 3 works if you don't connect it to aliens. If it was a standalone film, it was a different character, it would have been a great film.
I have a lot of mixed feelings about there is good stuff in there, which made it all the more painful for me to. But anyway,
it undid aliens. That's the problem. The cardinal sin it made it destroyed. It made aliens pointless. That's my big problem with it.
And again, that's a whole other discussion. But I want to talk about my favorite special effect, which is from Aliens, which is what I learned a lot from, which is the facehugger scene, where they brought to life a facehugger to attack Sigourney Weaver. Essentially by creating several different facehuggers that all had different individual functions, but by editing it together just in the cuts, it made it look like this thing scurried across the floor, leapt up and attacked her and wrapped its tail around her. And that, again, you can look that up on YouTube. It's in the DVD extras. And Alec Gillis got to work on that scene again. Forever grateful to that man for being a role model and for helping me out in my journey. But when I saw that that's how they did that was when it all clicked. Like, oh, it's the edits. It's what's in the frame. And that's like, if you can be clever with that, you can do anything.
That's right.
And for me, again, growing up, not getting like every toy that all the other kids in my school were getting. Not that I didn't get toys, but like I said, it was a lot more, few and far between. Like I was literally hammering together pieces of wood and coloring them with crayons and calling them Transformers.
You won't get Snake Mountain, were you?
But at the same time, like, what did that do for me up here? And now I'm here with that. So,
same here.
It's like, that's pretty cool. So, all that clicking together in that moment with that movie, that was, I'm sure I could go through 100,000 different special effects that I think are amazing because I love that stuff. Mm-hmm. But that's the one that really opened it up.
Good answers, man. Great answers. I think that's about it. We there's a lot more we could cover, and I think I had such a fun time having you on the show. I think hopefully we can get together again, maybe do like a part 2 to this and talk about some other stuff.
Oh man,
Um,
I had a great time.
Hell yeah,
Yeah,
man.
probably we definitely got carried away with the
Oh
time with
no, it's all
the
good. No, it's good.
that sort of thing. But uh, I did have a lot of fun. So thank you so much for having me.
Definitely a pleasure having you on. And again, guys, please, who's watching it or who will watch it in the future, check out his stuff. All the links are in the description on YouTube. I highly recommend checking out Quantum Terror. It's on Tubi. You don't have to pay a nickel. You can just sit there and watch it. You'll love it. Be excited about his next project coming up. That's gonna be some cool animation. You got a hot, sexy chick in it on an alien planet. Can't go wrong with that, right? But is there any last thing you want to say, Chris, before we wrap this up?
If you're a filmmaker, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's all baby steps, but you will get there if you keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's what I gotta say.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, that's it for this one, guys. Chris, you hang out round back. I'll get with you. But
Awesome.
see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.